Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted. I'd appreciate it. I also love it when people leave comments. So, if you have an idea for a video or you have a question or constructive criticism, those things are all great. I appreciate it. Today I wanted to do, it's a multi-project video, and I thought it'd be kind of nice to do some classic silver ring band designs. None of these will have stones, but they're all nice looking rings with not too much effort required to make them, so they're good beginner projects, I think. One of them is just going to be two pieces of flattened square wire kind of woven back and forth around each other, and I think that'll look nice. The second one is, I remember seeing these years and years ago, and I've made a whole bunch of them over the years. It's just a piece of twisted 18 gauge silver wire kind of made into a rope and then put between two half-round wires of varying sizes. I'm going to use 8 gauge half-round for these. And then finally we're going to have kind of a wide-ish ring that has a border on either side and some decoration soldered down to some sheet in the middle. So lots of variations possible on that one. I'm just going to do some little kind of scroll things and we'll call it good, but there's a million different things you can do with that one. So again, like I said, I think these will be kind of fun, easy ones. Before we get started, I wanted to thank some groups of people. My patrons, I have 2 new patrons, Heather C. and Julie. Thank you for signing up. I really appreciate your support. And I think that you'll find that the group of people who are already over there on Patreon are a super nice group of people with lots of knowledge. And I've learned so much from them, and I think it's a great community that they're building over there where they can give each other advice and show each other's work and get some input from each other. So it's a nice place. So thanks for that. And thank you for my previous patrons too. The other group is my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 12,500, which is halfway to 25,000, which is blowing me away a little bit. Thank you for that. I'd love to hit 25,000, so if you know anybody who might be interested, feel free to share my channel. But thank you for your support. I really appreciate you taking the time to subscribe and watch my videos and comment. I also really appreciate the financial support. The super thanks and the buy me a coffee things really help with the rising cost of materials. So thank you for that. All right, with that stuff being said, let's get started on these projects. These are a couple of my design idea books, and they're available on my merch store. I find them super useful for sketching up my designs in advance. I didn't used to do that, but it has improved my outcome immensely. The newer ones that are on the site, where am I at here? There we go. The newer ones that we've recently put up have some conversion tables on the back. They're kind of handy. This one's fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters. There's one we just put up that has American wire gauge 2 millimeters, because I know a lot of people in Europe who watch the channel say that they don't really use American wire gauge over there, which makes sense. So that might be helpful. But either way, check it out. So today I'm going to do 3 basic kind of silver rings. The first I'm going to do is going to be some flattened square wire that was 12 gauge originally, which normally would be 2.01 millimeters on the side, and I rolled it through my rolling mill, and you could pound it flat with a hammer the same way just to get the same effect if you don't have a rolling mill, but I made it to about 1 millimeter. It's 0.99 millimeters when I measured it. So we're just going to weave that back and forth and solder it all together, make a nice little band. Second, this is 2 pieces of half-round wire. 8 gauge is what I'm going to use, which is 3.25 millimeters wide. And then some 18 gauge round wire, which is 1.02 millimeters, and I'm going to twist it back on itself so it's kind of a rope look, and we'll solder that between those two and make a band out of it. And then finally, number 3, I didn't number it, I guess. I'm going to take some 16 gauge square wire and put a border on a piece of 26 gauge sheet, and then we're going to solder on some little fine wire designs out of 20 gauge. 20 gauge wire is 0.79 millimeters, the round wire. 16 gauge square wire is going to be 1.3 millimeters, and 26 gauge sheet is 0.41 millimeters thick. So I think they're all relatively simple ones. It's been a while since I did one of these, so we'll see how it comes out, but I'm going to try and get those as symmetrical as I can. You could do some variations too. You could make, you know, the waves get gradually narrower as you near the bottom of the ring if you wanted to, or you could just make them the same, the same size all the way down. But I may come up with kind of a little bending jig for this using my little pin vise over there. And this one will twist some wire using my drill. But let's get started on this one first. I have some wire that I flattened out and annealed so it's soft again. I think first I'm going to take a minute or two and try and get this. It's a little bit wavy from when I squished it in the rolling mill. So I'm going to try and get it to be relatively straight. By the way, if you've never been to my channel before, some basic information. I use hard silver sheet solder primarily, which looks like this. And I use a liquid flux. Lately I've been dribbling it on rather than spraying, but sometimes I spray it with a spray bottle. My torch is a Silversmith model, which is their acetylene air torch. And it's a great torch. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to figure out what size of ring I want here. I think I'm going to make a pretty good sized one, maybe a size 9 or something. Let's see how that goes. And I'm going to overlap it a little bit. I have a tendency to run a little bit short, mostly because of the thickness of this versus the thickness of what we're using. So I'm going to add a little bit extra on there. I usually go a little more than 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to put a mark on the side that I'm going to use to measure. And then this, I don't know how much shorter it's going to get, so I'm going to make it, at least half again as long, probably a little bit longer than that, just to make sure I have enough. Let's go like that, about there. Then I'll use this as a guide to measure the second one. I think I'm cutting way more than I need, but I'd rather have more than I need than not enough. So I feel like when you're trying to weave things together, it's much easier if you start when you have two things that are connected. So I'm thinking let's solder these together to start with at a nice angle. From there, I think it'll make it easier to bend things. So let's solder that. We need to flux it first, and then we'll use a little bit of solder on there. I do something called pick soldering a lot, and so if you're interested in learning how to do that, I'll put a link up there for you. It's where you pick up a little bit of solder on the end of this, heat the piece up to the soldering temperature, and then touch it to the place where you want the solder to flow to. It's a super useful way to get exactly how much solder you want into exactly the place you want. So I think it's a useful skill. I'm going to move that so I don't light it on fire. It should be par for the course for me. So I'm just going to put a little flux on there. Make sure it gets crusty. I'm going to pick up a little bit of this solder. The key to doing something like this, where it's all spread out, it's easy to focus all of your temperature down here, but that usually doesn't work very well. You have a lot better luck if you get the entire piece up to the 1450 degrees it needs to be for the solder to stick to it. Or at least get it close and then bump it up right in the spot where we're going to touch the solder to here. Okay. I think depending upon what angle you soldered these together, it would affect the way that this looks in the final outcome. So I'm going to be putting this one underneath this one. And so this is going to have to kind of bend a little bit that way. But then I think let's try and go over to that vise that I have and set a pin in there and make sure this stays in the same position. We can kind of create a little bending jig out of it and see if that works. Okay, I've set up some pins here. These ones were already here, so I didn't really even need those, probably. But I'm going to try and hold this down, sort of, so it doesn't twist on me much. Let's see if we can kind of bend this way. Oopsie. I accidentally popped the little pin out and I couldn't remember which one I had it sitting next to, so but I got one of them kind of done like that. So now let's see if we can do something similar here. See, I'm stopping and kind of flattening it back out because it has a tendency to try and twist on you. Okay, so in order to try and get these to be more symmetrical, I think I'm going to, as I go, solder each one. So if I got this one how I want it, then I'll solder it closed. And then we'll come back and get this symmetrical, solder the next one, and just go down the line like that. So let's go back over to that other area for a minute. I'm going to cut myself a little more solder. Just to get an idea how many twists I'm going to have. Not too many, probably. I'm guessing maybe a total of 4 at that size range. So I don't know if that jig was the best way to do this or not, but for now I'm going to go back and try again on it and we'll see. We're back. Okay, I'll be right back after I solder those two. This is starting to look like it's that medical symbol, catechus, I think it's. I don't know if I pronounced it right, but it's getting a little harder to bend now because I don't have as much to hold on to here. So you could use a pliers or something if you need to. All right, I think I'm going to take this back and we'll solder that, and then we'll figure out where to cut it. Okay, one thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut this one because I ended up being a little bit wider going down, up and down this side than this is right here, and so I'll make sure that this part isn't going to be included in the ring itself. It looks like this is going to meet up pretty good, and this is one of the situations you run into with a wide repeating pattern, is when you go to make it into a ring, getting those ends to line up in a place where it's kind of easy to conceal. And so this should, because this one ends, you know, part of the way through this this particular wave, same way over here, so we can get it pretty close to a size, what do we say, size 10, I think. We'll just have to file these ends off, cut it about the same spot, file them flat, and then we'll solder those together. So the more time you take getting this kind of stuff nicely filed, the less problems you'll have later as far as the way it looks and how clean and neat it looks. One of the things I catch myself doing sometimes is I'll get something shaped or you know, that's taken a while to get it shaped nicely, and I realize that I really dinged the metal up or something, and sometimes I'm just too lazy to redo it, and I always regret that. so if you mangle it, you know, so maybe you put it down as a practice piece and try it again. Or finish it, but know that you're going to recycle it, you know, or modify it in some way to make it look better. Okay, I'm just going to do a little bit of cleanup with the Dremel and then let it pickle, and then we'll move on to the next one. For our second one, we're going to have two pieces of half-round wire. These are 8 gauge, and I cut them to be a little bit longer than a 10. We'll see how close we get on that. I got them all straightened and filed at the ends. We need to make our little twisted wire rope here out of some 18 gauge round wire, which, like I said before, is 1.02 millimeters. And so I just chucked a piece of 18 gauge wire into my portable electric drill. So let's go twist that into some twisted wire. Since I don't have an assistant here with me today, I'm just going to hook this over a peg on the little vise there. And I'm just going to start off slow, keep it, you know, relatively taut. I don't keep it so tight that it's going to break right away, because this is work hardening the wire really badly. And so where it's twisting the most right here is usually where it breaks off when you get to that point. But I usually like to let it go until it does break off, but you know, without putting a lot of pressure on the wire. So there. So now we got some nice some rope there. It does have a tendency to be twisted a little tighter right at the end, so oftentimes I'll pull the piece I'm going to use from not right there. But I'm going to cut it off so it's a little bit longer than this. And then I'm going to spend a minute or two trying to get this as straight as I possibly can. And you can tell is if you put it on the table and it rolls nicely. I'm going to use some pretty good sized chunks of solder on this. I see a lot of people use tons and tons of little tiny pieces of solder. I never really saw the reason for that, because once it really starts wicking, it flows nicely. So let's see if we can't get this all fluxed nice. As long as we got things pretty crusty here, should have good flow. Most of the mass is in those big half-round wires. That's why I'm kind of focusing on the outside there. I'm just trying to make sure we got a good solid flow all the way down without any gaps. Okay, let's cut this guy off. We'll file those ends nice and flat. It's going to be a little stiffer than it was. Just going to push it past like that. If you need to use two pairs of pliers like this, it is pretty hard to bend this, so but you want them pushing together nicely. So I'm just going to kind of, after I flux it, I'm just going to park it right there, kind of. Okay. Then I'll just do a little cleanup filing, and I'll round that back out, and we'll pickle it. Okay, for the third one, I've cut myself a piece of 26 gauge sterling sheet, and these are 16 gauge squares, which are 1.3 millimeters. So I need to get these laying parallel on this thing, soldered down to create a border for this ring, and hopefully get them kind of straight. Now, the other thing I want to avoid is I want to not have a lot of sloppy solder mess on the inside area here, because I'm going to solder some designs on there, and I'm going to try and minimize those leaving any sloppy solder mess as well. I would like to maybe oxidize the inside area so the designs will stand out. But to get these soldered on here without leaving a big mess, I can think of two different ways to do it. One is to pre-melt some solder on these square wires on just one side of them and place them there, and then get this hot enough for it to flow and stick, and then it should wick along the then it should wick along the bottom of that thing without spreading out very much. The other way would be to lean some pieces on the outside or to pick some from the outside, but I think I'm leaning towards pre-melting some solder or sweating some solder on here. I'm gonna spray this down too. Sometimes your sheet will warp a little bit when you put the flux on, especially if it's thin like 26 like this. I'm going to get these as parallel as I can. And I'm just going to heat the whole thing. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and trim off the excess sheet on the outside of this too. Alright, so I was going to make some little scroll work kind of things out of 20 gauge. So let's see if I can do something like that. Let's decide on a size. Let's go with like about that long. I'm going to cut one more to make sure I like that size. So I was thinking just something that kind of went down that. So let's cut a bunch of these. This could of course be just about anything. You could make a whole series of little silver balls or something like that. The one thing to keep in mind is that wherever you're soldering these things down, it's going to make the overall part of the ring there thicker and therefore harder to bend than the rest of it. And so you got to kind of, you don't want to get too thick on things. That's why I'm using really pretty fine wire here. I don't want to make it so much harder to bend wherever these are soldered down. It's already going to be a little harder. I think I'm going to try and do something like that. But in order to get those in there without a lot of slop, I'm going to do what I did on the sides. I'm going to sweat a little bit of solder on these. And then we'll reheat them so that they stick down, and then we'll make it into a band. I'm going to try and dry this slowly so it doesn't, because When the flux is drying, it boils, and sometimes it'll move things out of position for you. So I'm going to try and gradually evaporate it. And the reason I have these overlapping a little bit like that is because I want this pattern to be relatively seamless. And most of the mass on this one is in that bottom and the sides, not these little wires here. So I'm going to spend some time pumping heat into that area rather than the wires themselves. They will probably get to the temperature they need to be based just being in proximity to that. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and solder that closed from the inside to start with. Zip some of these little bits. I wanted to thank all of the people who downloaded my ebook. I really appreciate that. It helps a lot. So if you haven't heard about that, it's a annotated guide to all of the 2023 YouTube videos that I put out. So it's a collection that includes the original sketch, like I draw it here. It also has a final picture of the either outcome, the single outcome, or the multiple outcomes, like this one's going to have 3 in this video. It has a difficulty rating. It includes a list of materials and also some notes I made about the project, whether it was hard, were there aspects of it I might do differently if I was to do it again, stuff like that. It's a really useful guide to the videos, so if you're interested, check it out. I think it's a good way to have access to a whole bunch of projects. So I'm going to round this back out, and then we'll pickle it, and we'll take a look at them at the end. I got all 3 of them shined up. Here's number 1, which I think turned out basically how I was thinking. Number 2, this nice kind of rope going down the middle of this one. And I've done a lot of variations of this too. 2 ropes in the middle, different kinds of wire on either side, 3 ropes, one on, like 5 different things here. There's all sorts of variations. But those are pretty good sellers, it shows. And then this one here, which I'll probably oxidize to kind of make the design stand out. So, but that's what I was thinking. I went the opposite direction that I did on the drawing. All right, I'll take some better pictures and put them at the end. All right, well, that was the 3 classic silver ring bands. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave and leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you think. Also, take a moment and watch a couple other videos. I have 330 some videos now. There's almost certainly something else that'll interest you. And then after you do that, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber as well. Last thing is, make sure to hit the video description down below. There's some important links there. You can get that ebook I was talking about. There's a link to that. There's a link to my merch page. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about Patreon and that nice community over there. That's a good place to check. And there's even a link about safety. So check those things out. Come back to see me again, and take care. Happy silversmithing.